welcome everybody to the Net Zero Energy Buildings. We're going to call it NZEB Knowledge Series 2019. We are starting this series of webinar with the first project of ITC Mudfort. ITC Mudfort, which is a residential building in Bangalore. We are really excited to start this series with this exemplary project that has pushed the envelope for energy efficiency in various ways, in design as well as technology. This particular series is called Green Conversation. So we are going to talk about what exactly this project is about, how did the team go about achieving high standards of energy efficiency, and really sharing their experience while working on this project. The intent of having this project, in the series is that as a listener, you have some takeaways into what you could potentially apply in your practice or in your teaching or in your research, and really push the envelope towards reducing energy demand by buildings. So a little introduction about myself. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Deepa. I am a senior project manager at Environmental Design Solutions. I also lead all the education initiatives at EDS. I will be the session moderator for this series. And here I have with me my expert panel for this series. Here's First, I have Mr. Arijit Gupta. So he is our client. Great. He's a senior project manager at ITC. He has more than 15 years of work experience in the building industry, actually a diverse work experience. He has a background in science as well as business. And he has really steered this project in the direction and the outcome that you actually see today. He's been instrumental in bringing this project to reality and actually making sure all the sustainability features are implemented on ground. So Arijit will share client perspectives today on the panel. And then we have Mehul Patel, who's principal at CNT Architects in Bangalore. Right. Mehul has vast industry experience working on projects of various typologies across India, notably in southern parts of India. He has been a principal at CNT Architects since 2005. His focus in work is pragmatic, sustainable, and reflects the ethos of time, place, and context. In this project, Mehul is going to talk about how he approached his team, how they have approached the design, keeping sustainability in mind. You will actually get an insight into what an integrated design approach is all about, and how that has been instrumental in shaping the building the way it has, as the way it can be seen today. And then we have Sandhya. Sandhya is a senior project manager at Environmental Design Solutions. She has more than 15 years of work experience in the architecture as well as green building industry. She has vast experience of working on various green building projects across different rating systems. Sandhya has been instrumental in guiding the entire project team to implement 2 rating systems for this project, which is GRIHA as well as IGBC Green Homes. And looking at how these are overlapping and guiding the team so that with clarity, so that they are actually implementing all the compliance related aspects without any confusion in a very streamlined and efficient way. So she will share her insights from a sustainability consultant perspective. Then we have Mayank Bhatnagar. He is a senior project manager at Environmental Design Solutions. His expertise is in energy efficient design. He is an engineer. He has vast experience, more than 10 years experience in whole building energy modeling, thermal analysis, HVAC design, and high performance design consulting. He has been instrumental in studying the technical aspects about energy efficiency and the systems side of things for this project. And he has a very good insight on exactly what worked to reduce the demand of the building to a very lower, EPI, as we will discuss further in the webinar, compared to the benchmark for a residential building. So we have a diverse panel here sharing different perspectives. So without further delay, we'll get started with the discussion. So let me first introduce you briefly to the project, and then I will switch it over to my expert panel who can talk further in detail about the project. ITC Mudfort is a residential building you can see in the picture. It is located at Jeevanhalli in Bangalore. The construction was completed in 2018, 10-story residential complex. It has 2 wings and 54 units, which is a 3-bedroom configuration. And this project has been designed for ITC senior management. So it's a fairly, it's not a small project, but it has come with its fair amount of challenges. Some of the key features in this project is definitely the first thing is climate responsive design, how it's integrated into architecture, and how the this approach has actually helped reduce the demand for energy in the first place. How community and green spaces have been thoughtfully designed in this project, where there has been some constraint. At the same time, there have been a lot of free hand into how it could have been designed. And because of all of this reduced energy demand, which we will actually keep coming back again and again. Not only energy demand, but water, use of materials, landscape, and how this has gone into improving the indoor environment. For all the good work put into this project, this particular building has got many recognitions. Some of them are that it being the first 5-star rated under the GRIHA category residential project in India. So it's a 5-star rated GRIHA project and the first residential building in India to get this 5-star rating. This project is also IGBC Green Homes Platinum certified. It's sort of rare to see a build project having 2 rating systems. So we'll discuss about this. And of course, it has received an award for the best environment friendly residential space from NDTV Property Award. So without further delay, we'll start with talking to the panel about the project. I'd like to first start with Mr. Arijit Gupta and just want to understand from you, being a client, what were the vision and goals for a project like this? This is a residential project. So of course, we always know the function of what a residential building is all about. But as a client, what was your vision and goal? Was energy efficiency a part of this? And then further along, we'll talk about why you decided to pursue 2 rating systems instead of 1 for this project.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, it's been a pleasure to be part of this and to tell you the story behind this project from the inception. Mudfort evolved somewhere around 2014, where we were trying to develop this property into a residential space. And the basic requirement was to enhance the work-life balance for the people who are working just next to this property. In fact, this residential complex is around a 5 minutes walk from the workplace for many of our division. So to begin with, the project's intent was to improve on work-life balance for the employees. To expand to that, in terms of the vision, we at Central Projects Organization do develop a lot of category of the projects, and there are certain underlying themes on which we think through every project, whether it's a residential project or a commercial project or a warehouse project. And that underlying theme, one of the key component of that underlying theme is sustainability. And when I talk about that word sustainability in this context, basically we were planning to build up this apartment into a very busy urban context. And the intent was to basically create a responsible citizen within this busy urban fabric. So that's how it had evolved. In terms of the question that Deepa, you had raised about why two certification system we went for, because as we were exploring the ways and means by which we can improve on understanding of a building in terms of its performance, we came across this rating system. Both have their own different approaches to possibly arrive almost at the same destination. IGBC on one hand, to that point of time, we had an understanding that electromechanical performances and the selection of the materials that you do to dominate the kind of outcome that you get in terms of sustainability or other. Whereas GRIHA, we saw it as a system which has more vernacular approach to design in terms of wind flow, daylight penetrations, and others. But as I was mentioning to you, the common theme remains to be the common sense. And some of these are, if I am building a building which should have a very less carbon footprint, I would use lesser amount of resources that we have. So use of the fly ash, or let's say use of GGBS in the concrete, or the selection of granite as a local material that can be used, is a very common common sense decision. So in fact, any decision making, it's more than this commitment for this certification, is also about your ownership and commitment towards this goal. And this runs to almost every component of decision making as you build these green buildings, I believe. You take a decision on a material, you think about it that, okay, what is the origin of that material? What is the chemistry of that material? And understand that, okay, is it serving or it is contradicting to the purpose that we are trying to do? So answering your question, whether it remained and did it been perceived as a building to achieve a good rating? Yes, the entire process of procurement, decision making had this component as a common theme running across the design phase, across the construction phase, as well as the closeout phase. As on date, we have got around 50 plus residents there, very happy occupants. And some of the things that they really do appreciate is the quality of the light and air through the building. And in some cases also do express about the quality of the space that is being created. There were challenges actually to achieve this, and more to do with the context in which this building is built. Is actually in a very dense urban neighborhood, and the challenge was also to to preserve the trees that I believe my colleagues Mehul and Sandhya will also say that it was a challenge to make most of them survive throughout the length of the project. What was the driver for this? Was not the recognition. So in fact, this is a project where we never went for the pre-certification or anything, but the core belief system for this sustainability always remained initiation, design, construction, as well as handover stage project. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you've really given us a good insight that how, as a client, you had that clarity that sustainability is integral to any development in in your portfolio. So now let me ask Mehul as to what really was the design brief that was given to you. Was this vision translated to you in the design brief? Uh, how did you react to the design brief?
Like how you heard Arijit, when we got the design brief from ITC, it was pretty clear. And actually, we were quite surprised to see that because we were so used to see design brief coming from real estate project where things were like very uh, unclear.
Right.
So when we got the brief, it was very clear in terms of the kind of unit they want, the kind of a vision they have, the kind of requirement they have, and then the user was very clear over here. So we could really kind of respond to very specific requirement over here. The requirement of sustainability and the idea of the green home was always there since very beginning. So that also helped us to kind of conceptualize the whole project from day one. So the clarity of brief was really useful. Other thing is the belief in a sustainability. Now, in this particular case, it was not shallow. Many times we hear that people say that they want to achieve a platinum rated or like a green certification, but that remains as a just a marketing strategy. In this particular brief, it was truly requirement of the sustainability. They wanted to do it. They wanted to kind of invest into the sustainability. So that was actually a good thing about the brief.
Right. Yeah. So I think uh, the attitude towards sustainability was genuine. So
It
that
was
kind
genuine
of
and very explicit.
right and explicit as well. Right. So so I think that was your brief, and then you would have started working out on the design for this from scratch. So could you walk us briefly through the design approach, how you thought about envisioning this brief, not only in terms of the sustainable development, but also in terms of functionally what was required on this site, how you went about thinking about it from the
Sure.
beginning.
So, of course, looking into the site is in the middle of the city, and it's a very high density area. General context is like a low-rise development, which is very tight. There is absolutely no space around the site. So this was the only
Right.
site which was like a good relief to the context, and it has lot of large trees. So that kind of creates certain level of a responsibility that you don't want to kind of lose out under the void we have in urban fabric and the kind of trees we have for the context. So that was one important requirement for the project, which is kind of we took it as a primary responsibility as a response to the site. Second thing is the context is very busy. We have a road on foresight and it's busy road. It has a lot of noise. So how do we really create like a how do you create refuge from the concrete jungle what we have around the context? So that become like a second aspect we need to deal with. Now with this kind of a thing, the first thing we get in the mind that how do we cut down the building footprint such a way that we retain the large amount of open space we have and the green we have. So obviously in this kind of a high density multi-dwelling unit, you have to go for a multi-story building. And that's what we did. We kind of did a multiple study. Okay, if we go for like a 5-story building, what can be the density? 10-story building, what is the density we are getting? 20-story. So we did a lot of those kind of a study, and based on a permission, whatever the bylaw permits, we kind of came to the configuration which allowed us to work with a very tiny footprint and retain the large amount of a void space. So for that, we had to go for G+9 kind of a structure. Now, once we got a footprint, then the important thing is that how do we locate this thing on the site, and how do we orient that thing on the site? Now, typically when we have this kind of exercise, our first tendency is to really look at the traditional wisdom, so like how traditionally it is done. Like traditionally people have looked at things like a climate, the context, and design things which is very pragmatic. So we have kind of taken the same approach over here, where we looked at the like a very compact and a linear building which is placed onto the western side and open up the things onto the eastern side. Now, at the first sight, you might say that no, facing the west is actually not the advisable thing for the green. But typically, I mean, for the sun part diagram, but that was the best way we could really kind of get the large void space onto the site and retain the maximum green. Now, while we have created the larger facade on the western side, we kind of looked at the simple devices like no veranda space, or we kind of create the layer of protecting spaces, which kind of protect all the primary spaces on the western side. So that way we could manage the density sitting onto the western side. The idea of putting the large component of the mass on the western side is to create the shade, the shaded portion onto the eastern side, so that we can use that area for outdoor activities. And that's the challenge we have in a most project, that how do we create the more comfortable spaces at the ground level, such a way that we can develop the whole idea of community, how we can really experience the ground, and doing this kind of a thing we could really achieve that. Another thing is the site was gently sloping from northwest corner to the southeast corner. So we use that as an advantage to kind of create a certain kind of a way for the water, so that we can create the rainwater harvesting onto the southeastern side and create that itself as an experience on our side. So these are the like a primary aspects we have used to kind of design the building. Now, at the looking at the unit, again, because it is designed for the senior management and a similar kind of people, we had to work with a very democratic layout. That means that we cannot have a different layout and a different direction, because it has to be distributed to the equal level of people. So then we cannot have too much of a variation. So we looked at the design where unit opens onto 3 sides, and all of them are kind of organized such a way that all units open onto the 3 sides, where each spaces can open into at least 2 sides, allowing the cross ventilation. And categorically, we have put down the living and dining such a way that they open into the completely different direction, allowing the ventilation through the entire unit. So no, you can see, I mean, this particular layout, that you have the living opening onto the one side with a very large veranda, and on the other side we have a dining opening into the completely onto the nature side. So that allows the living spaces, or you can say public space of the house, to have a better relation with the nature, like all the elements of nature. Yet they are protected by deep veranda space. Now here, if you see the veranda is good 2.7 meter, or you can say 9 feet to deep veranda. That doesn't allow any kind of a direct light coming into the space, and that protects the spaces from the harsh sunlight and a very heavy rain. In fact, no, these spaces are so nice that in a monsoon condition, you can just sit in the veranda and enjoy the rain. It become like a really nice feature of the design. Similarly, private spaces like a bedrooms are placed onto the corner, opening onto the 2 sides. So we have like a large opening towards the veranda side, and then you have a small opening which is happening onto the other side. So depending upon person's requirement, you kind of open and close the whichever side you want, or the whichever size you want, and that makes the bedrooms very cozy and very domestic. So that's how the unit is really designed. Then how unit relate to the other unit. We have a large the angan kind of a space which allow a lot of conversation with the neighbor and which allow a lot of spaces happening outside. So that's how the units are really designed. So that is broadly it.
Right. I think that's a good, I understand that you had this site which was linear, but was not really in a favorable orientation. Predominantly, you had this east-west sort of facing, but you could
Yes,
still have a, approach it, you could have climate responsive strategies by this big verandas, terraces at every unit level, which could shade the facade.
yes,
So although it was a challenging site, but you could still see within that how you could best come up with climate responsive strategies that is most appropriate in terms of shading, ventilation, daylight, as well as architecturally the sense of space that you wanted to create for this
correct.
for the kind of occupants that are going to occupy this. So I think that's a very, I think as a start that is great. So now I want to ask Sandhya, uh, as a sustainability consultant. Mm, yeah, I want to just jump to this right now as to uh, what were the key sustainable design features. By that I mean is that again I want to reiterate that this project pursued two rating systems. One is IGBC Green Homes, and the second is GRIHA. And this is a residential building typology. So could you, Sandhya, walk us through some of the more, pointed features in this project? Like now that the architecturally the building was had these climate responsive design integrated, and taking that further into green building strategies, what all things have were in this building, notable features?
Yeah, sure. To start off with, actually, the design really helped us to crystallize a lot of sustainability features. So the project actually took the term green building beyond its established definition, and we had a lot of exemplary performances with respect to the environment and the environmental design concerns, which were obviously in alignment with the rating systems which we went for. But even in the rating system, there has been a lot of things which has been done beyond the requirements. So to start off with, of course, I would like to really highlight what Mehul said about the facade designs. So the entire design was, the shape of the building was completely governed by the site or the constraints of it. So we had the longer sides which are facing the west and the east. So the challenge was to get the low angles or sun angles. And obviously as a designer, he has managed to get those. The further things which we were working on is getting the daylighting. So you can see actually in the entire project, we have 81% of the habitable spaces having a lux level of about 100 lux to about say 300 lux. So you can see that most of the spaces have good daylighting coming across in the entire year. And as what the bedrooms have been placed, you have a room which is having two windows, which is a very important criteria in today's FAR driven designs, residential designs, where you have cross ventilation, fresh air ventilation. So these are some of the criteria which are a part of the rating system. But in this also, we have achieved almost 70% of the habitable spaces have cross ventilation, which is a very important aspect. Apart from that, the landscape. So the site itself, the building footprint, you can say, is approximately 24 to 25% of the entire project. And we have a landscape which is a soft landscape, which is distributed on the ground and also on the terraces, which is also another 25%. Rest of the spaces which were hardscape or the driveways which you can see, they have been treated very sensitively in terms of having paver blocks with an SRI value. You have grass paver joints, open grid system. So all these aspects were really looked into it, which is also a very commendable thing. Another important thing which has been achieved in this project is a water efficiency. So you have three aspects under water efficiency, which I would say is uh, the water used through low flow fixtures, which is almost about 64% against the baselines. Then you have 100% recycling of the wastewater through the on-site STP plant. And another important aspect is that we are harvesting almost 100, almost no, I would say 100% of the rainfall or the roof and the non-roof runoff. So we have a rainwater harvesting tank where the water is treated and reused again. We have percolation pits where the non-roof water is being sent back again to the ground. So apart from this, of course, the important aspect is that the brief given by the client, the thought process behind and the team was in complete alignment. So the methodology of construction, the way the work was carried out was absolutely in a very amicable way, and it reflects on the project, and that's why where we stand today. It a ratings with 2 rating system, and that too with the ratings which are at the highest level.
Great. I think that was a great overview of so many different strategies implemented in the project, right from rainwater to water reductions and landscaped areas on site, um, daylight and ventilation. I think in residential buildings, primarily the intent is to provide good natural ventilation and good daylight. That's the two things which could be very challenging in a very dense development, which is seen in most metro cities. So this project has really tried to achieve that in an excellent way. Now I actually will go to Mayank and ask him that Mayank, you have done the energy analysis for this project. As Mehul has already explained, all the climate responsive design features that were integrated, the client had a clear vision of green building performance and sustainability for this. So when the data came to you, for which you had to actually now make the energy model, did you have to, what were your reactions to it? Because you have such a vast experience of having worked on hundreds of energy models, and here comes to you a project which already has integrated so many key things, a lot of which is fundamental to design, to a good design. Did you have to run a lot of optimization, or was it just good to go? Did you already see that the design as it is already knocking off the demand, energy demand? So Julie, just share some initial reactions on the energy model, and also some numbers in terms of energy efficiency.
Okay, so when we received the data regarding the architectural drawings and plans and sections, so it's pretty much clear that it was in line with the green building rating guidelines. Basically, they have a pretty much larger verandas or balconies which shaded their glazing facade, and because of that, you can save the demand of your cooling for the building. And on the envelope side is already insulated roof construction and a very low WWR, which reduces the cooling load demand of the building. So it's pretty much in line with the energy efficiency. But on the active side, we have some analysis, like in the specification of glazing. we did some analysis, what should be the cost effective and best possible glazing material we can use in the building, and what should be the lighting power density of the spaces, different spaces. So we achieve around zero 0.4 watt per square feet as a lighting power density in the project. And after doing all the reduction in demand, then we go with the air conditioning side. So as it's a, you can say, we propose to have a 5-star, B 5-star rated air conditioning system at least for each species that should be used, so that we can achieve as much as possible savings, because we are aiming for both GRIHA and IGBC Green Homes highest rating 5-star and platinum. So we need as much as savings we can get. Apart from the energy efficiency, uh, from the hot water requirement of the building, because of the area on the roof, the project has installed solar water panels to meet the 85% of hot water demand. So these are the basic energy efficiency parameters. Initially, we received some of them with the passive strategy, and then we analyze another active or artificial lighting and HVAC system for the building to get maximum energy savings for this.
Right. So, in most residential buildings, usually the typical scenario is to not provide air conditioning, right? And the tenants are free to install any kind of AC that they want. So, for this, did you assume that there would be a 5-star air conditioning system, and hence, by including that, you achieve the energy savings?
Yes, one of the major points of energy modeling in for GRIHA and IGBC Green Homes, that you need to have an air conditioning system for all residential spaces with at least 25% of conditioned area. So if you are giving a residential building, you have at least 25% of conditioned area, considering living room and bedroom as a conditioned space. So with the protocols of IGBC Green Homes and GRIHA, we have modeled according to as a conditioned building, considering living and bedroom as a conditioned space. And if we are not proposing or not mandating the tenant to have a 5-star rated building, a 5-star rated air conditioning system, then it is required to have a minimum efficiency requirement with the GRIHA and IGBC Green Homes requirements. So by that we propose that every tenants which are going to install their air conditioning, that must have at least 5-star rated, 5-star rated air conditioning system into the building, and that we have all modeled and predict the energy performance for the building.
Right. So obviously, if the tenants are comfortable with the way the building is designed, then and they don't install AC, or maybe in a moderate climate like Bangalore, it could be very comfortable with a good building design. So possibly this EPI could be even lower in reality. That is
Yes,
possible.
yes, yes. Of course, of course.
Right. So I think that's where, so I just want to highlight summarize kind of what you said, is that the project has actually achieved close to 31% savings over a benchmark of 85 kilowatt hour per square meter under GRIHA, and then close to like 19% savings over the IGBC baseline. So
Right.
I just want to highlight again to the listeners that the air conditioning is really assumed over here, and in reality, of course, it could be used, or maybe more or less, it could be up and down. These are all great sounding things, like, all the features you are all making it sounded like it was so easy to implement all the sustainability attributes from the site level to the building level. But I'm sure there have been challenges while executing the project as well. So going back to you, Arijit, what do you think briefly was the primary challenge for you as a client in this project? Was it a budget, or was it time, a constraint, or anything else?
See, I believe the challenge was to maintain the continuity with what we believed in the beginning, and that was that never changed, and we were very focused in that way, and like Mayank was explaining about the choices that we had made, and project gives you a lot of choices in terms of the decision, in terms of a lot of equipment. Some of them we attach it with things like green, and we have got a insulation on the ceiling. We have got there are a lot of implicit equipments, plant and machinery, systems that we improvise inside the building, like a choice of a transformer, or let's say the choice of an elevator, or let's say the choice of a water treatment plant or a sewage treatment plant. As long as your common ethos of thinking about sustainability is concerned is consistent, you would have your due diligence on every aspect of it. You tend to ask the transformer guy how efficient is the transformer, or when you're talking to your STP, you're talking about, okay, how much it is going to cost when you run the STP. So in many cases, as an owner, the challenge is basically, yes, it is good to develop something which we are all proud of. Another important aspect is also that the project people should not only be the appreciator of such places, or let's say so right from the beginning, as I was mentioning to you, every system, every plant and machinery, every component of that we bought, we had we used to do a kind of a cost benefit analysis, a life cycle costing of cost, everything, so that at the end of the day, the project team, which includes all my colleagues, Mehul, Sandhya, and Mang, the point is that at the end of the day, the guy who is running the property and the people who are the resident of the property should carry this bandwagon of truly being a green citizen to take a step forward, and the challenge, as you say, is also about how you inculcate a culture where the sensitivity with which you build something is being honored and appreciated, and also add value in a long term. So there may be hiccups, there may be some of the features that you tend to have believed it would have helped the occupants, may in an initial phase of a time create some kind of a problem, like hot water system, a centralized hot water system. We all believe that it will work, and in many cases we never implemented a solar electricity generation in the although that inculcated some additional credibility to come in terms of points to the rating system, but we chose what we thought is right. And in fact, throughout the design process, I think what makes a project success is the synergy. The thought process between a client and a set of consultants who are key people who are driving it. If they synergizes and believes in the same thing and have a trust on each other's judgment and conclude on a decision, it not only creates a project that everyone at the end is proud of, it also creates a product that every stakeholder is proud of for a long time to go. So challenges reduce synergy. And
I
I think that is what worked in this project.
Yeah, very well said, actually. The way you talked about challenges and having a really long-term perspective and then bringing everybody on board on the same page. So that's really, I think, helped you in overcoming the challenges. So now we have about 10 minutes into the session. I just wanted to uh, tell all the attendees that if you have any questions, you can start sending in the chat box, and we will start taking the questions in some time. We have a couple questions now, but there is some time while our speakers are sharing their experience. You can start typing in your questions, so we will take it in some time. So now, going to you, Mehul, as an architect, what do you think was your primary design challenge? Everyone knows every project will have challenges, but really, if you want to highlight any one or two, or maybe there was none.
No, there are always challenges, and we consider that as a useful parameter to kind of come up with a different design. So here, I would say one of the challenges were the number of trees we have on the periphery. So we have a very large tree, so and the roots are really spreading to great distance. So when you are putting up the car parking, so how do you really look at the car parking, which is very efficient and kind of take the very least amount of a footprint? So that kind of push us to the certain kind of a design which has to be very orthogonal, very organized, such a way that we can kind of get the maximum car parking within the building footprint or the minimum footprint, so that we can save all the trees. Uh, because we are
Right.
looking at green building, we also had to kind of be extremely careful with the process, because general understanding that no, the green buildings are expensive buildings, so we have to be like extremely conscious about the cost of the project, how we kind of design the spaces has to be very efficient. The way you use material, it has to be very cost effective. So that was one important parameter we had to really look at, and then they run the project process such a way that we are constantly evaluating the cost. Uh,
Right.
Another thing about the veranda, though we kind of talked about veranda a lot over here in terms of the protecting device, but it took some time and a good amount of negotiation to kind of convince the team about it, because the proportion of the veranda was higher than the conventional building, because we looked at like a really deep veranda, so that was really eating into inside spaces. So if the brief is saying that 2200 square feet unit area, then we kind of consume quite a lot of area into the veranda, which made the room slightly like no smaller than probably what they were expecting. But
Right.
through a good amount of discussion, and of course, since they were also very committed to the whole idea of sustainability, and of course, it's a Bangalore climate, so it's not that difficult to kind of convince a person to kind of need of the veranda space. So that was one
Mhm.
important challenge. But then ITC team was also kind of very kind of excited about having a lot of semi-open spaces, and that really worked for the design.
Right.
So I would say these were the primary challenges which kind of contributed to the architecture we have done.
Right. I think the outcome of the building clearly shows that how you have creatively uh, responded to the design challenge. I mean, challenges on the site for sure. So now I would ask the same question to Sandhya. In terms of challenges, really like communicating sustainability. I mean, I have seen in my own experience is that as a challenge, which probably may not or may have been here. And secondly, the two rating systems that the project has gone for, how has that benefited, or how has that added more complexity, if it has, to this project, if that was a challenge?
Yeah. So, fortunately, you can say that as the project proponents, all of them were in alignment with understanding the basic fundamental requirement of green building or a environmental green building uh, build structure. So communicating the requirements of a green building or the basic fundamentals of it was definitely not there. We did have challenges in terms of executing it, or you can say it was a very healthy, amicable fight towards getting a goal. Say, for example, in terms of achieving daylighting, uh, trying to get landscape, trying to see what would be the waste for the waste construction waste management. How do we try to see that, how do we recycle it or make sure that it doesn't go back to the landfill. um, we see what are the kind of materials which we should be using. So all these aspects, I would say the only challenges we had was in terms of brainstorming together and amicably coming up with a solution which would be a win-win situation for the project and also for ITC, because as you know that things are cost driven also. In terms of two rating systems, I would all would like to say is that both the rating systems have similar aims, approach, and the structure to rate the performance. The only difference that lies in the sustainability is the methodology, or which varies considerably in terms of the measurements of the building, like building performance or environmental criteria. Like for example, how mine mentioned that IGBC would go in for ASHRAE standards. GRIHA would have to talks about an EPI index, that's the energy performance index. It talks about compliance to ECBC requirements. So these are the some of the credits which were looked at. So there was a wider spectrum which we had to evaluate this one whole building on, which was, I think, it was a very good thing. In terms of achieving the rating system, highest rating system in both. There are many other things which are there in the rating system. Like GRIHA talks a lot more detailed in terms of the methodologies of construction. It emphasizes on how are your utilities planned during construction, what is the water usage during construction. At the same time, IGBC Green Homes talks about cross ventilation, fresh air ventilation, exhaust systems. So it was a very wide spectrum which we had to evaluate it. So you can understand that how this project has been designed, executed, and will now be is operational for past almost a year against these all these environmental criteria.
Right. Yeah, really, clearly from what you're saying, it has benefited the project by increasing the spectrum of things that they could comply with, and that has also been challenging at some levels. So now, Mayank, I want to come to you and ask you, all the energy model was done, and the reduction in energy was quantified. But as you clearly know, that this is more of a predicted number, the predicted performance. So, I want to ask you challenge from that point of from the point of view of operations, and um, how a project should look at this number and what should they do with this. What does it mean to occupants, and while the building is in operation?
So for energy modeling point of view, the predicted performance, what we are seeing is because there are many assumptions we have to meet during the modeling part, like the occupancy pattern and typical schedule of building operation, like what will be the occupancy in daytime or nighttime, and what should be the lighting power consumption during the daytime lighting, similar different for different equipments.
Right.
But in an actual case, that would be a different, and by that can be resolved with the basically two words, you can say metering and monitoring. So you can meter your energy consumption, water consumption, and monitor your occupancy profile, or you can say you can record your weather data, weather station on the side, and then you can say uh, easily check with your predicted performance by changing these parameters into your simulation model, and then also you can analyze whether what we are predicted is up to the mark of actual performance, or there are some variation, and what are the reasons behind the variations. And that can be faulty equipment issues that can be resolved,
Mhm.
or you can say you can also have a opportunity to further analyze more energy efficiency measure that can be
Right.
beyond the what we are typically use in the building for the you can say a typical residential and typical climate zone. So by meeting and monitoring of their data, that will be helpful for future projects also.
Mhm. Right. I think this is a good point. Like when it comes to energy use, one part is predicting that so much savings has been achieved through design because it's designed to achieve that. So the challenge is
Right.
really to actually ensure that it is actually achieving it during operations. And so
Correct.
metering and monitoring will actually let you know whether that's happening and let you take the corrective actions, show
Right.
you opportunities for energy leaks or further reductions. So
Right.
uh, so really that is one of the takeaways here. So in order to reach net zero, you'll have to actually meter and monitor the energy demand of the building and how the energy is actually used. So
Right.
you know it, that's very insightful. It's already 5:30 now, and we've already getting many questions from the audience. So I'd like to quickly summarize our discussion here and then take the questions coming from the audience for the panel to answer, so that we are already a bit short of time, rather overshooting the time. So I'd like to summarize what we discussed here. What I gather from our discussions here is that really the vision and the clarity coming from the client is greatly influential in a project of the kind of with the kind of outcome that we get to see here. But that said, it's not the only thing which is important or which is like a game changer in a energy efficient design process. The architect, the engineer, all the other consultants have to be on board with the intent and with the genuine attitude of achieving sustainability inside on in design, which is what is clearly evident in this project. The way how climate responsive strategies were integrated from the beginning, having a long-term life cycle cost kind of analysis gives a long-term perspective towards the building. It's not going to be operational for 1 or 2 years, but for decades to come. And that also helps take decision for the larger project team towards sustainability. And further, thinking about a holistic view of material and water and waste and light, natural light, ventilation, solar renewable. There are ample things in a project where the rating systems actually help you address sustainability at all these levels. So what I gather is the benchmarks are more important than actually the level of rating. So if most projects understand the benchmarks for each of these criteria, then they will be able to have a direction going towards achieving high energy efficiency goals for their project. So both the projects, I mean, both the rating systems has given the broader spectrum for this project to address. So that's pretty much what I have taken away from this conversation, and I hope the listeners have also taken away from this conversation. With that, let me open up the question answer session. So the first question is from Gaurav, actually from Taru. When did you realize that the project was eligible for 2 ratings? Maybe Sandhya can take this question. So when did you realize that the project was eligible? I mean, the eligibility for rating. I guess.
Yeah, actually, as in the brief which we got in had 2 rating systems. So the whole eligibility criteria for the rating system was we put down the basic fundamental benchmarks for both the rating system on the table, and we discussed it with the entire project team, and that's how it was answered that what are the basic fundamental requirements of both the rating systems which we will be going ahead with. And then over the entire process of design execution, we realized that we were getting very close to it, and at the last leg we really pushed it further to make sure that we reach the highest level of rating in both the certifications.
Right, right. The next question is by Sankirani. Question is, was there any transplantation of existing trees out of the saved trees in the project? And was there any reuse of, I mean, whether replanted? I think that's what the question is.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, Arijit, you can take this. I'm sorry, Mehul, you can take this question.
Sure. So largely we had trees on a periphery, so we could save pretty much all those trees. There were a couple of trees which was coming in the middle of the site, but that is something we didn't really transplant because those were like the casuarina kind of a tree, and we felt that no, it's fine to do that because anyway we are planting more trees, which was like no more indigenous and appropriate trees for the site. So those couple of trees were not replanted; they were too large to be replanted.
Right. Okay, so then the next question by from Meenal is that how was construction and demolition waste managed on the site? Maybe Arijit can take this question.
Yep.
I'll just repeat the question. How was the construction and demolition waste managed on site? No, anybody from the panel can actually answer.
Generally, when to start off with the entire construction, we had a logistic plan in place which talked about how is the entire methodology of construction going to happen, where is the waste going to come, where is the material going to come. So all this was very well planned. So we had the waste collected on monthly basis, and then that waste was obviously audited on the monthly basis. And we had given a basic guidelines at the initial start of the project to help the entire project management team and the construction team to understand that these are some of the waste which will be generated from this project, and that will help us to understand how can we recycle or make sure. So most of the waste which was there on the project was reused. So we had these debris which were there, which were reused in leveling of the project, and the other materials which were there like the steel and all. So there was a tie-up done with the local recycler, and everything was sorted out in this very methodological manner.
Okay. Then the next question is, which baseline have you considered while doing energy simulation? This is by Ajit Kumar.
So for IGBC Green Homes, there is a specific annexures for baseline case. There is specific requirements of baseline parameters for envelope lighting and other equipments. And for GRIHA, there is no baseline case. There is always a single proposed case design that we have to compare with the benchmark API, which GRIHA has said for the different climate and different type of building typology.
Okay, next was Where was the rainwater stored on site and what is it used for? This is by architect Patharwala.
Okay, I can answer that question. So rainwater is, there are two ways of using the rainwater in the site. The majority of water coming from the terrace is collected into the water tank in the basement. So we have looked at a very large water tank into the basement. The water which is flowing on the ground, it is largely going in a percolation pit, and we have a rainwater harvesting pit on a southeast corner. So that's how the water is collected. Now, the water which is collected on the ground, it's largely getting percolated, and we are not able to use it for much of a thing. But the water which is collected into the basement, it's largely used for no flushing and landscaping.
Uh, just to add here, Deepa, the rainwater harvesting we have done in a very comprehensive way in this project. We have got, as Mehul was mentioning, a big rainwater tank. The surplus of the rainwater during the splash rains have been gone through 6 numbers of percolation pit that we have all across the site. And only after the percolation is also over, then it is finally let go for any unuse of it. Also going back to the question of the debris removal, right from the beginning of the project, even before the contractor stepped in, there was a very responsible way of knowing, and the project team actually went and visited the places where, in case of any disposal will happen, and where it will happen, and are the concerned person and the concerned statutory bodies aware of where these debris have been getting dumped. So this was already been carried out as a part of the initiation of the kickoff even before the start of the activity. So that really helped, that you basically set your rules right in the beginning, so that all the stakeholders are at the same page. So I think that helped in this project.
Okay, and I think we can take just one last question. The question is, what was the reason for not using solar photovoltaic, solar PV?
Well, I'll take that. There was actually
sure.
not enough space to be. That's a single line answer. Is that the as Mehul was mentioning, you have got a 26% ground coverage. That is the footprint of the building. Now, out of that, the terrace that we had partially segregated those spaces in 2 levels. Some of these ended up in the usable terrace on the 8th floor, and the remaining went up around 17,000 square feet that went up to the terrace. Where basically generating an electrical output that won't even suffice to generate enough amount of common area lighting. But at the same time, in terms of the utilization of this energy into something that the occupants will be better beneficiary of, was a hot water system. And to have a meaningful hot water system which is used by an occupant, the amount of space that will be taken by the solar panels would actually end up consuming the area that we are left with. So, the intention was that if we do a system, let it be of a meaningful use to the user. So I think these selections are also driven by what is the final utility of that decision that we will take. And in this case, solar hot water system gave a better meaning to it.
Right. Yeah, that's, I think we just that was our last question. And with that, we've come to the end of the webinar. Before signing off, I want to thank Arijit, Mehul, Sandhya, and Mayank for sharing your expert insights, taking out time from your busy schedule to share your experience and knowledge on this webinar. Thank you so much. And before we end this webinar, I want to just announce that our next session is on 17th May. We're going to have another conversation on Unnati project. The name of the building is Unnati. And we're going to have Ashok Lal, architect, Vivek Mahajan, and Mariam, the panel who have worked on this building. And please tune in next week as well, and we'll have another interesting conversation. And with that, thank you very much to each and everyone who's signed into the webinar. I'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot, Deepa.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you.